I love Israel. I've been like 20 times. It's a crazy place.
Recording's running.
Okay, everybody, welcome to How to Be More Embodied, kind of a very simple title. This is a complete beginner's workshop to embodiment. So some of you I know are experienced, like Danny and Virginia, I recognize as students, and Mark, I think I've seen before, Lucy. Give me a wave if you're like new to this term. Maybe you've heard it, you don't quite know what it means, some sort of pretty new to the area. Give me a wave. Nobody. Okay, couple. Okay, so this is really for you two. Okay, I'm going to ignore everyone else, and give me a wave if you're sort of maybe like intermediate. Maybe you've done a bit of yoga, but you're not like an expert in it. You know, you're just doing a bit of movement or dance or something. Okay, cool. And give me a wave if like you're like deep already in it, and somehow you've come to the beginner's workshop just because it was free to check me out, or I don't know, some other reason. Okay, some of you are deep in it. All right, okay, cool. So why don't I ask you all to put your beginner's mind hat on, no matter what your level is, because I will be sort of delivering the promised workshop, which is aimed at beginners. Though as a martial artist, my experience is that there is no advance, there's only basics done well, okay, or basics understood more clearly. So those of you who are more intermediate and advanced, you know, put that aside. Okay, everything you know, particularly if you're from a culture that's big on knowing. Any French people here? Okay, and just put that aside. You can pick that up afterwards and put on your beginner's hat. Everyone got their beginner's hat on? Yeah, it can literally help to just put something aside, like physically with the body, as a sort of almost like a little ritual. Beginner's hat. Yeah, that means you won't be assholes and you won't waste my time. And I can actually deliver the workshop I said I would. Okay, so my name is Mark Walsh. I'm sure most of you have sort of heard of me on the internet, like embodiment's my life. It's what I love. I've been serving people professionally with this work for about 13 years, and I think it's been my full-time life for at least 20. My own background is psychology, aikido, dance, yoga, a little bit of body therapy, a little bit of improv. And actually, these are the topics, the ones I just named and a couple of others, are the topics we could say this is the field of embodiment. Yeah. So there's lots of ways to define embodiment. I'm going to start in a minute with that. But one way is it's the field of study of body, mind, arts that meet two criteria. One is they're awareness based. Okay, so sports or exercise, that's totally valid. You know, I do some pull-ups at home. It's not an embodiment practice. It's just exercise. It's not awareness based. The other criteria I would say is embodied arts are trying to develop the person. So maybe you've heard of aikido, judo, they even say karate do, though that's often missed out with karate. So this is a Japanese idea, which means path or way. So the idea here is rather than judo or karate or aikido or kendo, rather than techniques, which is jitsu in Japanese, the idea is the art is to develop the person. Yeah, so this is actually integral to Japanese culture. Like every Japanese school kid is doing judo and kendo and things like this. And the idea here is to develop the character of the person. It's not to learn how to, you know, fight with a sword. That's not a necessary life skill in modern Japan. Yeah. So, and this idea actually was also the heart of the Greek Olympics, was the idea of character development. Okay, well, this was a Western idea too. British sports, in England, we invented all of the sports. You should all know this. And most of you beat us at them now. You know, particularly, do you have any Australians here? Disgusting creatures. You're like British people who have been left in the sun with a load of poisonous animals, and it made you really good at all the sports, and you beat us. I know, but yes, hello, Mark. We have a few Australians and New Zealanders. They're like Australians, but a bit nicer if you don't know New Zealanders. And you know, sports that we play in Australia, Britain, New Zealand. These are were originally character building activities. Rugby, football, cricket, and all these sort of American corruptions of those sports. These were originally designed to develop the person. Unfortunately, in the modern world, that's kind of been a bit lost, right? If you look at, say, a soccer player in the Premiership or the German league, they're not generally a sort of moral figure of one you'd want to emulate too much, generally, okay? Okay, so the idea of we can develop ourselves through physical movement, through physical activity, through awareness-based. That's what embodiment is. I'll come to some more definitions shortly. Let's find out a little bit more about you now, because now the late people are here. Hello, late people, welcome. So please do rename yourself with your country. I would like, it doesn't define you, but it does tell me something, okay? So it's good to get a bit of a sense of the mix of where people are from. And then I can say, bon dia, bonjour, guten morgen. I'm gonna look through the screen here. As I said, it will be definitely helpful for me if you're willing to turn your camera on. If you're not, I appreciate you might be zoomed out. Yeah. So we will go for 90 minutes. I will not go over. The purpose of this is to give you an introduction to embodiment and how to be more embodied in your own life, very simply. Could you say in the chat, what is your main job? And I know most of you have like 5 jobs, but can you just tell me like the simple, non-pretentious one, okay? So like the main thing you do. A data analyst, maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, analyst. Okay, human, Cass, come on. I know you, Cass, don't be pretentious. I know your job. Engineer, counselor, tango organizer, psychologist, teacher, coach, psychotherapist, facilitator, Spanish teacher. Okay, trainer and bodyweight therapist. Cool, Lucy, you can add this to your work. Movement educator, wonderful. Community artist. Some of you movement people might know my friend Rafe, who just did the movement summit. Primary school teacher, great, great, great. So we do actually have some normal people here, not just coaches and yoga teachers who I spend a lot of my life teaching. Okay, good. If you are a coach or yoga teacher, that's fine, but let's face it, you're not normal, are you? All right, so what do you want? In one sentence, like this is my Saturday, okay? I could be in bed with a beautiful German lover right now. I removed myself from that situation to come and teach you. So let's make sure it's fucking worth it, okay? And also, oh, by the way, I swear, and I talk about sex and I tell rude jokes, I'm pretty inappropriate. If you like to be offended, or you even believe in being offended as a concept, please leave now, okay? Don't spend an hour and a half getting upset and then write me a long email, which I'm just gonna delete, yeah? So this is a Mark party. In a Mark party, it's 18 certificate. This is how we roll, yeah? Okay, so what do you want in one sentence? There's a Scouser here. Hello, Lizzie. I was born in Knowsley, believe it or not. Lots of love for the Scousers. Poto, bom dia, Christina. Okay, what do you want in one sentence? Like, why are you spending your life? You'll be 90 minutes closer to your death by the end of this workshop. Lucy in the Wirral, another one. That's practically Liverpool. That's like posh Liverpool. What do you want? It's actually really, really helpful for me to hear this. In the Netherlands, Nikki, this is my Dutch accent. Do you like my Dutch accent? Maybe you should all sit down and relax. I'm probably going to be in Holland again soon. Finland, I love Finland. Some of the weirdest, loveliest people in the world. You're aliens. I'm pretty sure everyone in Finland is an alien. Yep. Okay, what do you want? What do you want? To be better able to listen to my body. Wonderful. That, by the way, to connect with my body, that is a good definition of embodiment. To be connected to your body. You can write that one down. To live authentically. Wonderful. Thank you, Sally. How to get out of my head into the body. Great. This is what embodiment's all about. Koba's Burger. Is that your name? That's an awesome name. A different perspective on embodiment. Yeah, there's many perspectives on embodiment. Anyone that tells you they have the perspective, that's dangerous. I'm not big on fundamentalist. I'm not big on gurus. On our courses, we always co-teach. So people don't just copy me and my perspective. On our longer courses, we always have 2 teachers. Yeah, normally 1 male, 1 female, 2 different countries, 2 different ages, because there's so many perspectives. Oksana from the Ukraine. You're not the Oksana that introduced me to, which Oksana is that? I can't see you, Oksana. I have a soft spot for the Ukraine. Okay, cool. All right, good. Sounds like you're in the right place. I don't want you to waste your life. So what else? What is embodiment? Yeah. Take your arm. Everyone got an arm, at least one arm? You can take a leg if you don't have arms. And you can look at your arm as an object, like as an other, as my arm, we say, right? Like it's not us, yeah? And this arm can do stuff like I can procreate, I can put it. If I was a doctor, I'd say it's got this much muscle and this much hair and it's so many centimeters long and so many centimeters wide. I can look at it like an object, like a thing, okay? All right, let's not do that too much because it doesn't actually feel very nice. Why? Because your arm is not a thing, your arm is part of you. Your arm can feel, like these sunglasses can't feel unless we have any real like philosophical people here, right? And also these sunglasses can't move, they're not conscious, they're not going, oh, I'm gonna go over here, yeah? An arm, however, is feeling, it's moving, it's part of your life. So look at your arm again, and what has this arm been involved with? Maybe it's held babies, maybe it's had fights, maybe it's written poetry, maybe it was kissed by a lover. Maybe it's been part of your life for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. been part of your life. It's been part of who you are. If you lost your arm, it's different from losing a pair of sunglasses. It's part of yourself. There's a huge mourning when people lose a limb, because it's part of themselves. Yeah, it's part of yourself. Maybe you can say spiritually, it's, you know, it's not your true self or your deeper self, but it's part of who you are on some level. On some level. So when we look at other people, when we look at these beautiful people on the screen in these weird little boxes that Zoom makes us all in, right? When we look at other people, we're not just looking at pieces of meat. We're looking at history. When we look at Anisha or Sally or Elizabeth or Maria, we're looking at a way of being, right? We're looking at a way of being in the world. And that way of being, we could also talk about as embodiment. So some of you here have the way of being of, I'm nice or I'm sweet, and that keeps me safe. Anyone have that? Give me a wave. Maria just smiled when I said her name. Yeah, like some of you have this sort of be sweet, be nice, like I'm a nice person, be nice to me. Some of you have a different one, which is I'm tough, don't fuck with me. Anyone got that going on? Like, yeah, fuck him. Okay, bit of that. And who has I'm clever? Everyone try I'm clever. I'm very clever. Just play with it for a little bit. Act it, put it on. Actors are big on embodiment if they're good actors. It's like, I'm very clever. I shall evaluate the man from England. By the way, if I speak too quickly, do this to tell me to slow down. Do it before you hate me, okay? My brain is very fast. So there's I'm clever. There's I'm nice. Love me. Okay. Daniela, what's one of your favorites? Just to bring another voice into the mix. This is Daniela, my colleague, my trusted friend and confidant, my German who keeps me in line. What is one of yours, Daniela?
I think I like the being clever and being tough, like a combination of those two.
Clever and
definitely,
tough.
I'm not nice.
Okay, you're not having to be sweet all the time. I've seen you pull that one out of the bag when eventually, but
yeah,
it's not your go-to, is it? It's not your main go-to.
It's more like a pleasing thing, you know. So, but generally, I think I'm clever and then I'm tough.
Okay, so we have a way of being which we solidify as an identity. We solidify it in our body. And you can see this when you look at people, right? Like what's their way of being? If you just look on the screen, you'll see all these different human beings. And now some of it's stereotypes, so we have to be careful, right? We don't want to say, oh, men are like this, women like this. And some of it's situational, like maybe you just woke up tired, or maybe you just had loads of great sex or whatever, right? Like some of it's situational. Maybe like, you know, I know what part of Daniela's cycle she's in generally by her embodiment, right? Because I've known her for years. And it's like this situational factors, yeah? But there's cultural factors. Like, culture exists. Don't get upset, culture exists. Like I was talking about Australia and New Zealand earlier, you know, my wife hated Australia because people were like, "G'day," like in her face. And she liked New Zealand because people gave her lots of space, right? And she just really didn't like that. And it wasn't every person we met, but it was like 70%, 80%, whatever, yeah? And not in every situation, but there was a trend, we could say. Also, just the situation you're in. I'm different in Berlin than Brighton. Berlin is like deep and heavy. I mean, my hotel's opposite Hitler's bunker. It's like, right? That's very different. When I'm Brighton, have fun. It's got that town. Those towns have different vibes, and even neighborhoods within Berlin. We were in the hipster neighborhood yesterday. It was so different than the sort of, you know, the suburbs or whatever. Yeah, East and West Berlin. It still feels different. Okay, so we're embodied in place. We're embodied in our situation. We're embodied in culture. We can't separate these things out. So when I see someone for the first time, like Anthony or Elizabeth, I don't think I've seen before, I don't know whether I'm looking, I don't know whether I'm looking at their culture, their situation, where they happen to be today, or their character, okay? Could be like, if I've seen them 10 times in 10 situations, it's more obvious what's the character. So we should always be a bit humble with, you know, looking at other people's embodiment. Is this making sense? So we can think of embodiment as our default context, our default operating system when I teach computer people. That's how I describe it. Yeah. And we all have one. So we're all unconsciously embodied, right? We all have a default, okay? We all have that thing we do that's easy for us, that we do when we're not trying to do something else, when we're not doing our special workshop walk, yeah? And then we can be more consciously embodied. So we can actually, and this is a really amazing thing, we can not only change our state, which is huge, right? Most people rely upon the external world to change their state. People say, well, I would be happy, but what I really need is breakfast, to travel out of England, a boyfriend, you know, I need more money, right? I would be happy, but does that make sense? Or I would be relaxed. I just need da 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 da. Okay. And the problem there is we're constantly running around trying to change the world. And yeah, okay, change the world, get what you want. It's certainly easier to be relaxed when getting a massage, but it's possible to be relaxed while people are attacking you. I've trained that. Okay. At a certain level of violence, I'm quite relaxed. As someone trying to attack me who's drunk and doesn't know what they're doing, that's a game to me. That's my idea of a good time. Okay, is someone just trying to attack me who I don't feel particularly threatened by. They're just one guy. 5 guys with knives, I'm not relaxed. Yeah, depending on the training. So we can be relaxed in many situations, but certain situations help. The beauty of embodiment is you can actually take responsibility, not just for your state, which is already amazing. That's already amazing to be able to wake yourself up or calm yourself down. 2 very simple ones. Who needs to wake up right now? Give me a wave. Who needs to calm down or reduce their stress right now? Everyone point either up or down. So in embodiment, we have ways to do that. It's not magic, even something simple like putting my feet on the ground, breathing with my belly, slowing down my voice. I can calm myself down. I can literally reduce my heart rate. I can measure it, right? Or I can wake myself up, okay? I can breathe more in my chest. I can change my posture a little bit. I can speed up my movements. I can wake myself up. Make sense? So I'm just giving a very simple example of state regulation, yeah? Rather than be like, oh, I need a chamomile tea or I need a fucking espresso. That's external. Nothing wrong with those 2 things. I agree wholeheartedly with both of those things. But it's good to be independent of those. We can have at least some responsibility for our state. On top of that, we can also change ourselves over time. Okay, my students, what is the answer to all questions of embodiment? There are 2 answers. Answer number 1 is it depends. Answer number 2, how do we change ourselves over time? And I want to shout out people that studied with me before. Virginia, you're a geek. Come on.
Practice.
Practice. That's how we get good at anything. Practice, practice, practice. So embodiment people understand that learning is not just cognitive, right? Learning is this word learning. What are you talking about? Are you talking about cognitive learning? Are you talking about spiritual, emotional learning? Are you talking about skill acquisition? Like if I said to you, I'm an amazing lover. I've read a lot of books on kissing. How impressed would you be, ladies? Probably not very impressed, right? Because you actually intuitively understand that the skill of being a lover comes through practice, feedback, teaching, immersion. It doesn't come through cognitive learning. Yeah, the same, I would claim, the skill of being a leader. Have you ever worked in a business with a guy that had an MBA from Harvard but couldn't lead for shit or something similar? I have. I've seen those people. I'm like, wow, read all those books and got nothing from them. Because the cognitive knowledge, I mean, I had this in my own life. I'm super, super high IQ. Now, I don't say that to boast because I think there's actually way more important things in life. Okay. And I read every book in my library at high school at 6th form. Every single book. Literally, they were ordering books from Cambridge University, which is the nearest university to where I grew up, in order just to give me more books to read. Okay, but I was fucking miserable. I was alcoholic. I was depressed. I was failing in my relationships. I was just had all these authority issues and like all these issues. I still have most of those, to be fair, but I'm not depressed anymore. Or alcoholic, to be fair. Okay, so we understand that we can be smart in different ways. Yeah, embodiment is a way to be smart. And I don't just mean like sports smart, like kinesthetic smart. I mean like how easily can you tune into another human being? How can you make someone laugh? That's an embodiment skill. A good comedian definitely has that. How can you turn someone on? How can you inspire someone as a leader? So now we're in the realm, not just of our own awareness and regulation, but also how about other people? By the way, right now I'm mapping the skill sets of embodiment. I'm subdividing embodiment into skill sets. So we have self-awareness, that's a skill. Like, how are you right now? How's your energy level on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being super energized, 0 being completely exhausted. Tell me right now. I'm pretty high. I had some coffee. You know, did my Wim Hof breathing as well. Great. So that's a skill. Some of you had to think about it. Some of you were like knew straight away. That's a skill. You can get better at that. And I'm giving, that's a crude example. Yeah, if I said something like, are you more in your muscular or organ system right now in your embodiment? You'd be like, unless you're pretty developed in this work, right? Like there's more advanced versions of how are you, you know? Can you regulate yourself? We've already covered, can you wake up or calm down? Very simple example. There are many more. Can you make yourself more creative, for example? Yeah. Then we have the other side of it is the other people. How good are you at tuning in, of empathizing and connecting? Yeah. Like, would you be able to guess who was the most tired or the most turned on or the most creative person in this room? Right? That's a skill. Some people are really good at that. Some people are naturals. They don't need training, right? Like I was in Mallorca on holiday and there was a guy on the beach who would walk around offering massages, a Thai guy, and he would take one look at you and know what country you were from. And he'd say, oh, you know, Dobro pozdravit, Vika Paraski if you're Russian. And if you're English, he'd say, hello, mate, do you want a massage? He'd take one look at you. And everyone's in swimming costumes, right? But he could just tell from your body. Like that's like, this guy was a genius at embodiment, right? Very cool, huh? Very cool. Yeah. And some people are just more empathic or more tuned in. And then lastly, once you're tuned into people, we can actually lead them. Okay. So in sexuality, we call this chemistry. Yeah. In leadership, we call it charisma. In humor, we call this being funny. Okay. So different contexts, this gets called different things, but it's the same basic skill. I call it body leadership. You with me? It's making sense? This is all a little bit trickier on Zoom. All the skill sets I've just said, they're all possible on Zoom, but it's kind of a bit more challenging, you know? It's better when I can like bite you and lick you and grab you and stuff, but from here, it still works on Zoom. I just have to kind of put a bit more in. Daniel's not laughing at my jokes, but he has got a good beard, so I'm gonna let that go. Okay, cool, made him smile, there we go. You see, body leadership, making Daniel smile. So it's about the words, but it's more than the words. How do I know it's more than the words? Everyone look this way. Okay, everyone touch your knees. Go, touch your knees. Touch your knees, come on. Why are you touching your elbows? Okay, so you see it's more than the words. Okay, some of you went, even if you corrected yourself, your initial was to go for it. Yeah, so we don't really believe the words anyway. Okay, or what if Daniela, can I insult you in a really loving way?
Yes, you can.
Daniela, you are such a bitch.
Keep on going, please.
Yeah. You see, what she's feeling is my intention and my embodiment, which I love you. You're my friend, you're my colleague, and I think you're awesome, and I trust you with my life with you, you know? Like, we've been to hell and back together. I love this girl, right? She's like super, super close. So even if I say she's a bitch, that's not what my body's communicating. Does it make sense? Right? She's like, give me more. It's not because she's a masochist. It's because her body's feeling the love. Anyone else have a friend like this? Like my best friend, James, the things he says to me. Oh my God, the things he says to me. If you wrote those shit down, it would sound like the most abusive relationship in the world. But it's not. It's not because of the body he has when he says them. Yeah. I won't even repeat them. Even for me, it's too rude. Okay. So Elizabeth's thinking about this very hard. She's in her thinking body. Okay, so what are you learning? What are you learning right now? Kind of introduce the field, defined embodiment, this subjective aspect of the body. The body is I, not it. The body is more than a brain taxi. Also define embodiment as an area. So these different fields like theater, improv, martial arts, conscious dance, body therapy, somatics, that's all within the field. So we could define it that way. We could also define it as a set of intelligences, which I've just laid out for you, these different, like when I work in business, that's a nice one because it's concrete, you know, it's like this skill, that skill. You could get better at worse at self-regulation. I can make anyone way better at self-regulation in an hour, right? You mean you've got some basic skills. You're not a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old has no self-regulation skills, right? The dog doesn't have very good self-regulation skills unless they're trained. You know, you see a dog when they want food, they're like, woo! They really struggle with self-regulation. Poor little things. You can learn that. What are you learning? Tell me. How we can lead others purely with our bodies. Yeah, and that's based on your own self-awareness, your own self-regulation, your own listening, your own empathy. So that fourth skill set of leadership is based on the other three. I don't have my slides with me today, but if you Google embodied intelligence, you'll probably come up with some sort of video or model showing that I've made over the years. Are you learning nothing? Are you wasting your time? How is this relevant to you? How is this relevant to your life? Yeah, improving self-regulation in an hour. I can prove it in 10 seconds. Some people don't know this, for example, and it depends on their level of skill already, right? Everyone relax their belly and say, ah. Okay, who feels 1% more relaxed having done that? 1% or more. Just give me a wave. Okay, so if you didn't know that skill, you just got a skill for self-regulation. Now, of course, you might need to practice it. We can improve it. It doesn't work all the time, but you just learned one thing. Yeah, some people don't know that. Yeah, if you've done yoga, you know, maybe you've got 10 tricks already. Relax the forehead, you know, breathe with the belly, use the diaphragm, you know, you've got all, you know, use visualization. There's lots of tools, right? There's lots of tools, but they don't have to be complicated. Like literally just teaching someone, you know, to relax the belly when they're stressed is super simple. Or here's another one, peripheral vision. Okay, so you're probably staring at a screen right now. Instead, take in the whole of the wall in front of you, the whole room, if you can. Using the fingers like this can help you if that's a bit tricky. Okay, who feels a little bit more relaxed now? Give me a wave, at least another 1% more relaxed. I do. It still works. We call it owl eyes sometimes, that one. It was my friend Adrian Harris who taught me that one originally. So you're now able to better self-regulate, even if it's just a little bit. A couple of techniques, okay? And you can teach these in seconds. You don't need to go and learn twist poses for yoga or meditate esoterically. And I love meditation. I meditated this morning. I love breath work, but I also love just tricks, things you can give people. Yeah. So for state changing, tricks work. For trait changing, okay? For trait changing, not state. Do you understand the difference between the two? State is like being drunk. It comes, it goes. Trait is like being an asshole, okay? You can learn to be not an asshole, but it takes a while, okay? Being kind, being creative. Traits are more permanent and less visible. Here's the funny thing. You can't feel your traits. Yeah, no, you can't. I know you think you can, you can't. It's like the only way you can feel them would be to compare. So like cross your arms, everyone cross, literally, I'm not tricking you this time, cross your arms. Okay, so now cross them the other way. Yeah, so one is habitual, right? So this is the only real method embodiment we have for revealing traits is by giving you comparisons, right? Giving you like different embodiments, different movements. Maybe you go dancing and there's 5 rhythms in the 5 rhythms dance and it's, oh, one of these is familiar. One of these is this, the other 4 like this, yeah? So we can notice what's familiar. That's part of how we reveal our patterns, or we can get feedback. I can take a human being and say, look, this is what I see in you. This is, you know, how it shows up in your body. I notice your breathing, your tension levels, your posture. These are the basic tools we play with, yeah? And I've got to be a bit careful. Like, for example, I happen to know Cass is from China, right? I don't know Chinese culture that well. So I might want to be a little bit careful about what I say about her because it's like, you know, I don't know that culture very well. Whereas those of you who are Russian or Israeli, I know that culture pretty well. So I can kind of take that out of the mix, you know, much easier. Cool. Questions? Unmute yourself. I'm tired of my own voice. So just unmute and use words.
So how do you change a trait?
Practice. The other answer would be immersion. So for example, I lived in Brazil above a nightclub for 6 months and basically was deeply immersed in Brazilian embodiment in various ways, some of which I can talk about. Playing with children, dancing, making love, fighting every day, martial arts. And I was deeply immersed in everyone I knew were just touching Brazilian bodies every day, every day. After 6 months of that, it rubbed off. Okay, so that's the unconscious ways, immersion. Yeah. Or you can think of this of like, name the 5 people you spend the most time around. Or the 5 dogs, yeah? Okay, you're probably some combination of their embodiment. Not always, because we also live in systems by sort of outsourcing, but that's another way. The main way, however, is conscious practice. And this is the main thrust of what embodiment is all about. So we've got the state changing tools, and then we've got practice over time. Like, imagine you did a year of salsa dancing every night, or you chose to do a year of karate every night. Do you think you'd be the same at the end of that? Very unlikely, very unlikely, okay? The problem is most people's practice is really just their neurosis expressing itself, you know? Now, if you're new to embodiment, that's okay. If you're new to embodiment, just find any body practice that has body awareness in it, that isn't abusive, you know, that teaches ethical, and just dive in, fall in love. I call that first love embodiment. For me, it was aikido 20 something years ago. Yeah, fall in love with embodiment. If you're new, if you're like, what the hell is embodiment? Just find something you like, find something fun. Maybe it's improv comedy, maybe it's tango dancing, maybe it's karate, whatever, maybe it's, you know, conscious dance. Find something you love, fall in love with it, because it will deepen your relationship with your body. Okay. If, however, you've been around a little while, you might want to at least add a supplementary practice. Why? Why? Anyone want to say why? I've done lots of karate for 20 years. I'm very disciplined. I'm very tough, very structured. I've done lots of karate, 20 years. I'm going to do another 20 years. That'll fix all my problems.
Well, you might just reinforce your kind of bad shit, really, by doing the same thing.
Exactly, Danny. So maybe you're an aggressive guy who does an aggressive martial arts, the last thing you want. Okay. Or maybe you're like super pliable, agreeable person and you learn to do follower dance for the next 20 years. It's like you're just practicing being told what to do. Great. Right. So while we may still learn that basic, it's still going to basically get you embodied. You're also leaning yourself in a more limited direction. So the awareness, range, and choice is one of the little equations we use a lot. People write that down. Awareness, range, choice. So we have awareness of state. We can change that. We can have a choice if we have a range of possibilities. The same with your basic character. So your character won't just change, it just widens. Okay, so there's different ways of being. Like one of the things I've been practicing in embodiment, but also just in life, is walking away from an argument. Okay, so Daniela met me, what, 8-10 years ago? Quite a while back. I was way more fighty then. These days I can still fight pretty well, but sometimes someone just like insults me on the internet and I'm just like, delete, block, walk away. That's like a superpower for me. I'm like amazed I can do that. Right? It's just absolutely amazing to me. I can just not argue with someone now. It's like a whole new skill. Every time I do it, I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Now you might be the opposite. You might be, you know, very avoidant, but not be able to confront someone. Yeah. So you need a different embodied practice. Making sense? Okay. It's a lot of words. Why don't we just let that sink in? So close your eyes if you're willing. Turn your camera off if you want. Hide yourself from view if you want. Come to body. We're sort of about midway, I think now. Yeah, not quite. No special technique, no changing ourselves, really just tuning in, becoming aware of ourselves. Simple, tuning in, digesting the cognitive knowledge, noticing how we feel. Has anything shifted since half an hour ago? Okay, we could do that for another hour and it would be a good use of the time, but I want to get you guys talking to each other. So we're going to do breakout rooms in a minute. This tuning in is profound, actually. It's really profound. You know, I was just with a lover in Berlin and I said, hey, do you want to do X? And she like just spent a moment, she's an embodiment person. She just spent a moment and just went, you know, I'm not sure. Let me just feel into that. And it was really nice, you know, it was like she was just checking that something was, she was like a full yes before kind of doing something because she was agreeable. Yeah. Does it make sense? It was just like, yeah, this is safer for me and better for her, right? Like everybody wins in that situation. Okay, now that was a sexual context, but this could be a job context. It could be like, do I want this job? Does this resonate with me? Is this aligned? Like I tune into my sense of purpose through the body. I'm noticing what gives me two things. One is energy. One is like, yeah, I want to do that even though I'm really tired. It's been a long day. The other thing is this like relaxed sense of rightness. Does that make sense? Does anyone have a favorite pair of underpants? And you put the underpants on and it's just like right. You know, you're like, yeah. Okay, that's how I feel about life purpose. I'm like, me and Daniela are doing something and it's maybe difficult, but I'm like, yeah, I should be here. I'm aligned with this. Okay. So there's like two, one is just energy. The other one is, I mean that non-esoterically, I mean that like I'm staying awake when I should be going to sleep. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, I keep wanting to write my book, even though it's midnight. What's going on? That's life purpose for me. And the other one is this sort of more relaxed sense. So when those two are in combination, I'm really like, wow, I'm really on purpose here. Anyone do a job that wasn't on purpose? Anyone do a job that wasn't their thing? And then, what it often starts with is a subtle disquiet, a subtle wrongness, a subtle, did you ever put your underpants on the wrong way around? Right? Like, it's like the subtle, the socks that, the bottom bits at the top. And then if you don't listen to your body when it's subtle, what happens? It's like, what happens when you don't listen to a child when they ask you quietly for something? Get fucking louder. Okay, that's what your body does. And eventually it will fuck you up. You'll get ill, or you'll get, something serious happening to you, right? But at first, there's just a subtle disquiet. And as embodiment people, we can get more sensitive to tuning into that, whether it's consent with a lover, whether it's life purpose, whether it's just like, do I need to eat any more food? Like, I had this really delicious burrito last night. And halfway through eating it, I was like, you know what? I'm not actually hungry. I'd had quite a big starter, but it was a lot on my plate. And my eyes were saying, eat the burrito. My mouth was saying, eat the burrito, because it was just really tasty. But I actually just spent a moment, I just went, I'm actually totally full. And I don't want to be asleep for spending time with my lover for the next 3 hours. And I just didn't want to eat any more of the burrito. So I left half the burrito on the plate. And the waiter came along and they're like, is it okay? Are you okay? Is the food good? I was just like, I'm just full. I'm good. Right? Like, it's a real simple thing, but like, how often have you eaten when you're not hungry? I was doing that beginning of COVID. I was like bored, stressed, like just like every 2 minutes at my fridge. And I was like, hang on a minute, I'm an embodiment person. What's going on? Like, maybe I'm trying to meet a need here that isn't the right. You can't find the fridge isn't the right place to look for connection. You know what I mean? Maybe I should call a friend. Cool. Making some sense now? Some real practical examples, right? In intimacy, in food, in our jobs, real practical examples. Nothing, doesn't have to be esoteric. I'm not talking about like crazy tantra techniques or like crazy eating techniques, just really simple. Do I want to do this? Do I want to eat this? Do I want to do this work? Super simple. Yeah. Okay, so the question I'm going to give you for your groups is, why are we so disembodied? I mean, why even as an embodiment professional do I sometimes get that wrong and eat all the burrito and go, oh, I feel shit now. Why did I do that? Why even as an embodiment professional do I do things that aren't aligned with my life purpose? Go along with something I don't really want to do. Why am I sometimes not feeling my body for hours and then I wake up and I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Where have I been for hours? Yeah. So what are some of, without sort of super disclosing about your trauma, because that's one reason we could go into, but in your little groups for 5 minutes, let's say, why are some of the ways we're disembodied? Because obviously we talk about embodiment. It's also useful to talk about how we get disembodied. There's at least 5 reasons. Cool. This is making sense. Why are we disembodied? Have a little chat, make friends. The small groups will be confidential. So when you come back, don't reveal everyone's deepest secrets. Daniela, would you do groups of 5 or 6? You prefer not to join a group?
Groups of 4 to 5.
Lovely, lovely. Hello, Fabian. Nice to see you again. Bonjour.
All right, so you're getting an invitation, and if you find yourself alone, give me a moment to reassign you to a group.
Don't rush out. Why are we disembodied? How does that happen? German freeway. That's what it's called. I'm having a nice little workshop. It's quite relaxed, isn't it? How are you doing, Cass? Do you want to say hello? Hey.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. You?
A lot of guitars in the background there. Are they all yours?
Yeah. Well, I'm in my workshop.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you it's a lot of guitars. Some very beautiful ones by the looks of things. So.
Well.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So let's hear a few different voices. Oh, how do we become disembodied? We're talking about embodiment. We should talk about how that happens. Why do we need? Why is there a job called embodiment teacher? Why is that necessary? Maybe it won't be one day. Danny.
Well, we disconnecting from difficult emotions is one way we kind of disconnect from our body, to disconnect from.
Right. So think about when a kid has an emotion they don't like, if it's overwhelming, particularly, and then you'll see them, they'll tense up and they'll try and push it down, they'll try and repress it, they'll tense their body. Tensing our body is how we actually repress emotions. Yeah. This is a direct link. Okay. And some emotion gets made not allowed. This is partly cultural, partly familial. Okay. So maybe in your family, who was not allowed to be angry? That was like a bad thing. Yes, that was supposed to. Who was not allowed to be sad? Like when I worked in Brazil, that's a cultural narrative. Like, don't bring the party down, man. You know, who was not allowed to be scared? Particularly men aren't allowed to be scared. We have to be brave the whole time, like Russian men, you know. Okay, so we can keep going, right? Who's not allowed to be joyful? Like in England, you're allowed to be happy, but don't be too joyful. You know, calm down. You know, you sort of. First time I heard a West Indian friend of mine laugh, I had this mate at university called Floyd, and he laughs like this. Like this big full laugh. I was just like, I just felt so fucking white, you know. I was just like, oh my God, I've never laughed like that in my life, you know. And that made me, like, no disrespect to him, I think it was that I was repressing that joy. Does that make sense? Right? That's like a difference within ethnic groups in the UK, you know, like the West Indians I know have got much more ability to express that joy. Yeah, in England it's sort of like a bit pushed down with the sort of average white English person. Okay, it depends on the region, depends on your class, but you're going to see that. So, you know, these factors of things like gender, class, region, they're important, and you know, they're part of what of you was not allowed, right? So when we not allow an emotion, that's a disembodiment right there, right? You agreeing, Gilly?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else got one? How else do we get disembodied? Let's hear a few more voices. Mix it up. Come on, don't just watch the dancing monkey. I want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, we had one which was we feel other people's feelings too much, so we don't feel our own.
Okay, so this is the sort of problem with being highly empathic. Actually, the real problem there is lack of self-regulation, which doesn't sound as nice, though, does it? So people say, I'm very sensitive. I'm like, that's not a problem. The problem is you can't regulate yourself. Yeah, and naturally, we're, you know, if you don't empathize, you're a psychopath. So it's a good skill to have. The problem is for some people, they're unable to kind of put that boundary up. They're unable to stop that. Yeah. So there's different ways to do that. Some of which are just literally is just focusing on your own embodiment, right? Bringing your awareness away from the other to yourself. Sometimes it's actually finding that no in your body, visualizing a sphere around you. There's different tricks, but if we don't have that, it can be overwhelming, in which case people can just shut off their embodiment. It's too much. You notice the common theme here is anything overwhelming. Yeah. Okay, what else? What's another way we become disembodied, or factors of disembodiment in our life? When are you, let's put it another way, when are you most embodied and most disembodied in your life? We're always unconsciously embodied, right? But consciously.
And maybe another reason is outsourcing for like doctors, therapists, you know, like
experts.
Not listening. Instead of listening to your body, it's just let me take a pill. Let someone tell me what to do and how to do that. It's easier, maybe.
Yeah. So this is Eric Fromm, who studied the Nazis, called this the fear of freedom. It's actually easier to give authority to others. And our entire system is really based on this in school, in medicine, in, you know, experts. We, rather than listen to authority of our own body, which takes work and it takes choice, which so requires risk, we outsource that to other people. We say, right, you're the boss, you're in charge, right? This is why most people aren't going to be leaders. This is why most people struggle with embodiment, because it's actually difficult to say, you know what, I'm responsible for myself. It's a childlike position that's very attractive to put someone else responsible for you. Okay, and then of course society encourages this. We get used to this. Okay, so I would say your relationship to authority is potentially disembodying. Right, not that being a rebel habitually is any better. That's still a habitual position. Yeah, you have to rebel against everything. You're not free either. You know, freedom. The quote I heard once: "Freedom is doing something, even if it's what your parents want you to do." Right? Do you get it? Because it's like you can't be, if you're not free, if you're like, well, I have to rebel, you know, I can't do what my parents want the whole time, even though you're 52 and they're dead 10 years ago, you know. Cool. So a relationship to authority, that's a nice one. We've got a few more. When are you most embodied? I'm looking at the chat. I get disembodied when I'm in a group and have to speak. Yeah, that's probably just stress. Okay, so speaking in groups is pretty stressful. So we can think of stress because it tightens the body, right? You know this. When you get stressed, you tighten your shoulders, you tighten your breath. You've all had that experience. This isn't radical, yeah? So when we're tight, we can't feel. It's a very interesting experiment you can do, actually. I'll show you this. This is, if you've got 2 cups or 2 glasses, get 2 of them, fill one with water. I'll show you a little thing here. 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds. Little thing I learned from Wendy Palmer, who's an awesome embodiment teacher. So I've got 2 glasses, okay? Very easy to feel this one's heavier, yeah? But if I tense my muscles without breaking the glasses, now it's much, much harder to feel which one's heavier. Okay, so tension is reducing our feeling. And this is in a very obvious, just weight, okay? But emotions even more so, yeah? So when we're tense, we stop feeling. Stop feeling. That's sometimes why we tense, because the feeling is too much. When everyday life shouts at you, you have to be focused to hear what your body whispers. Yeah. So when life is stressful, it's a little bit harder to feel our bodies, right? Did you ever like relax at the weekend and then it's just like emotions come and you start, oh, what am I doing that for? And so I shouldn't be with that person. I should quit that job. You have to relax to get that clarity. Yeah. And most embodied when I'm in an intimate relationship. It sounds like a positive, good, intimate relationship. Good for you. So intimacy, and we're actually always relationally embodied. So a good therapist, just by being aware and kind, is helping you feel. Has anyone had that experience? Or a good friend, right? Like a friend listens to you and you can suddenly feel your own body. You can suddenly feel your own emotions. You suddenly get clear about what this is a powerful thing to listen to someone, to be present to someone, yeah? So good relationship, meaning there's presence, there's care, obviously not abusive relationships, yeah? A good relationship, we can be really present to ourselves. And certainly I think in an intimate context, for me, that's a sign of a healthy intimate relationship. I get more present to myself through the gift of the other. We're embodied in relationship. It's much easier to feel in relationship, yeah? Assuming it's not abusive. Okay, so let's put the Spanish for trait and state. Okay, nice. Sir and Esther, nice. Okay. I am unconnected. I try and cope with someone else's movements, or copy someone else's movements. Yeah, so I think we can definitely get disconnected by trying to be someone else. Okay, so like maybe I'm like, how should I be standing? How can I be beautiful? How can I be this? How can I be that? How can I be tough? How can I be impressive? That inauthentic acting, yeah. And we all act. It's very funny. You see a beautiful woman walk by, or the men are sucking their bellies. There's some, there's these ways we change ourselves by how we're supposed to be, even if we're, super enlightened feminists, blah, 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 So, yeah, how do we shape ourselves according to the dictates of society, according to the dictates of how we think we're supposed to be? Okay, this is embodiment and body positivity generally go very closely together, yeah. Do you think there are cultural remnants from Cartesian dualism? It is an intellectual question from the Frenchman, Monsieur Fabien. Descartes, but I try and pronounce it without mispronouncing it in the French way. I think, first of all, I think he's horribly demonized. I think he's unfairly made into the most dualistic philosopher ever, when actually some of that was political, because the church said, look, we deal with the soul. Some of that was simply expediency of not wanting to get his head chopped off. I think some of it is people misunderstanding Descartes. If they actually read the original, I think you'll find him less disembodying than some. However, there is the Western tradition that goes back to Aristotle, which is body-mind as separate things. Okay, so I do think we are immersed in the philosophy of our culture, even if we've never heard the names of the philosophers. So, for example, right now there's a postmodern trend that's becoming very popular in the West, which is also disembodying, which says, everything's subjective, there is no truth, right? And it tends to be focused around identity politics, which is very disembodying because it's about identities that are abstract. You may never have heard of postmodernism or Jacques Derrida. Again, excuse my French, please, Fabien. You may never have heard of Lacan. You may never have heard of, who was the power guy? Foucault. Sorry, they all have horrible French names, Fabien. And but these philosophers are now highly influential on young people in universities in the Western world, highly intellectual. Like, these are super, super influential, and they're absolutely disgusting in their philosophy, actually disgusting. Moral relativity. The light form is okay, the hard form isn't. But we are impacted by the philosophers of our culture, whether that be Confucius, for example. Right, Cass is from a Chinese background. There's absolutely no doubt that Confucian culture is massively impactful on Chinese embodiment. There's no doubt about that. Okay, I've studied Japanese culture quite readily. They have their own philosophers and thinkers and poets, right? Shakespeare is massively influential on English culture. He had all these expressions about the body. He invented all these great phraseologies about the body. This is in our culture. Like every English kid studies Shakespeare. Yeah, often though it's implicit. It's implicit. So this is quite a good thing to appreciate. Yeah, and by the way, I have seen that body-mind split. One of the most prominent places I found that in Europe is in France. So maybe Descartes has had more of an influence than is obvious. That's also the educational method. To do the education system in France is cognitive arguing. You take a point, you make a counterpoint. Yeah, what about trauma? Did anyone mention that? Trauma is profoundly disembodiment. We're not going to do a trauma workshop today, but that's worth noting. What about nature? Did anyone talk about disconnection from nature? Who has had the experience of going camping or being on holiday in nature or just walking in the woods? I was walking in Berlin. There's this nice park I was walking yesterday, and just feeling more in themselves after an hour in the woods. Who's had that? Or swimming in the sea and you're bobbing up and down, and at the get out of the sea and you're like, I'm alive, you know, like fuck, I'm back. Where was I for the last 2 days? I have that in the sea all the time in Brighton. It's partly just the cold that wakes the body up, gets the blood flow, but it's also sensation. It's also the fact that you're in this rhythmal kind of, you know, in the waves, you know? It's like, I walk in the woods and my whole limbic system, they call this tree bathing in Japan. Japan's got quite a lot of wooded areas because of the mountains, and people go tree bathing. And it's just like, oh, my whole system lets go. Make sense? Or you sit by a lake and then everything calms down. Yeah, there was a monk, Thomas Merton. He said, you should always sit by a calm body of water every day for an hour. That was his advice. Sit by a pond or a lake for an hour. Yeah. So for me, disconnecting from nature is part of our disembodiment. And this is where the sort of environmental eco-psychology sort of part of embodiment comes in. There's a whole wing of embodiment about nature. You could look up David Abrams or Charles Eisenstein. Who else? We've got on the Embodiment Conference, we've got like a whole section of the conference about this. Really, really important. Also, connecting to our own bodies makes us less likely to tolerate polluted urban environments. It just feels stressful, feels unpleasant. This works both ways. Yeah, so we've got nature. What about the people you're around? Like Daniela and I had a little meditate yesterday in her room, and it's just so much easier to meditate when you're with someone else meditating. Right? We did this course called the Embodied Facilitator Course. I just got back from teaching a module in Kent, and I was there like with all these embodiment people, and I was like, oh, I'm getting pretty good at this. I can really feel my body. Oh, you know, I was like feeling pretty fucking good about my embodiment. And then I went home and it's like, 50%. Right? Like the people you're around, are they disconnected or connected? So it's not just intimacy, as I mentioned. Connection breeds connection. Connection encourages connection. As a coach, those of you who are coaches or yoga teachers, the most important thing you can do to encourage embodiment, anyone guess? It's the most important thing you can do to encourage embodiment as a coach or yoga teacher. It's not tell people. It's be more embodied yourself, both in terms of trait, that comes with practice, trait embodiment, and state, feel your own body. So right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm feeling my bum on the chair, I'm, you know, noticing my posture, I'm, you know, feeling myself. This is the biggest gift I can give you, even over Zoom. You know? Okay, I'm going to read a few more comments. Yeah, too results driven. I would say too future driven generally. Okay. One of the few disadvantages of becoming more embodied is you can sometimes lose that results orientation, or that start being late for everything, that future orientation. So it's important to keep an element of that as a human being. You know, I often make the joke, a dog can't make you a promise, right? So this is one of the unique human features we have. A dog can make you an offer, but a dog can't say, I'll meet you next Tuesday for a walk. right? So this ability to coordinate over time is a huge gift as human beings. It's how we've created civilization, which is a wonderful thing. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Western civilization is an amazing achievement, as are other civilizations. However, too much of that future planning, future orientation can lead us out of our bodies. Yeah. Okay, touch. Yeah, touch is a big one, right? Anyone a bit touch starved right now? Maybe you've been on COVID isolation. You can self-touch and you can touch with awareness, but still touch is powerful. Touch is powerful. Yeah, there can be a cultural aspect to that. Thank you. Good. So I think we've covered the main ones. So stress, permanent stress, we could call that trauma, like stress trapped in the body, we could call that, yeah. Okay, tension, speed, right? Now, I'm naturally quite a fast person. However, there's a speed where I go beyond that, I lose contact with myself. Now, you don't have to be really slow the whole time to teach embodiment and use a creepy yoga voice. However, each of us has a speed where we lose contact. For me, it's actually quite high these days, but you know, there's still a speed. So knowing where you lose track. You think of the tube, the underground, the metro. And in London, like most cities, people are so stressed and so rushing, everyone's a psychopath. No one's feeling. At that point, I'm not even joking, it's not a metaphor. People cease being people and become objects when you're disembodied. We all do this. So we know about sexual objectification, right? Everyone knows about that, particularly the women. Okay, this is something I'm almost certainly have experienced, yeah? But there's other kinds of objectification, work objectification, you know, human resources. That's objectification. I'm not a fucking resource. What do you mean? How dare you? I'm a human being. Okay, speed objectification, just objects. Okay, busyness objectification, stress objectification, right? Trauma-based objectification, where we become violent because we're no longer empathizing, we're no longer feeling. You know? I was discussing with someone this morning over coffee, a Russian friend of mine, the Russian atrocities in Berlin in World War II. So not a lot of people know this history, but the Russian army was very, very naughty. Mass rapes on a huge scale in Berlin. And not a lot of people know this, and we might ask, how did that happen? Okay, and one of the reasons that happened was that there was the army was hugely traumatized by the time they got to Berlin, hugely traumatized. So their sense of empathy was extremely cut off. Yeah, new soldiers don't even want to shoot people. They find it repulsive, the idea of killing people, raping people. It's repulsive to new soldiers. Okay, soldiers that have had 3 or 4 years of war and are completely traumatized, this shit happens. Okay, also it comes from the officer class. So the officers were, how can I say, complicit in it. Okay, so it also does come from leadership. So even with trauma, there's still this other leadership matters. Leadership matters a lot. So when we look at atrocities, we might ask, how can that happen? How can that be? Whether the Russians, you know, it's the Russians or the Nazis or the Japanese, there's plenty of atrocities. The British, there's plenty of atrocities, right? But we might, one of the reasons is disembodiment through trauma. It's not the only one. Yeah, the cultural acceptance and leadership is also vital for that to happen. Yeah, so not excusing anyone. Give it a little shake, a little wriggle, talking about mass rapes and trauma. Still breathing? You still breathing? Keep breathing, guys. Keep breathing. Yeah, didn't give my normal trigger warning. Part of me of being embodiment and being able to self-regulate by shaking it off and breathing and noticing my posture is actually being able to look at the dark side. Okay, so a lot of people are scared to look at the dark sides of human behavior. I would say that they don't go away if we don't look at them. Yeah, actually, we're less likely to be entrapped by the dark side if we can at least have the courage and self-regulation to look at it. Does it make sense? Yeah, not all the time. You don't want to spend all your time staring into the abyss because the abyss stares back. However, some of the time. Okay. Generally, I'm known as a sort of happy, upbeat guy. Not a lot of people know I'm actually pretty knowledgeable about particularly genocide, Stalin and Hitler particularly. So it's well worth knowing about because you know that's in your soul, right? The line between good and evil runs down the middle of the human heart. It's not them. It's you. Too deep, too heavy for a beginner session. Daniela, it's Berlin. What does it fucking do to me? It makes me go, ugh. Okay, taking responsibility. So we have a little bit of time. I am open to your questions. Let's make this relevant to your life. Think about for a moment, what do you care about? Maybe touching in on the heart or the belly or the womb. What do you care about? Tuning in a little bit to your values, things that matter to you. Questions? Anthony. I've enjoyed having.
Oh, yeah, I have a.
Go on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I have a question about anxiety, I guess, in relation to trauma, because theoretically, I love the idea of being embodied and being more in touch with myself. But I think something I notice is that, and it's not cognitive, there's an anxiety that's just already there.
In the body.
Yeah, and it stops me from getting in touch with my body. It's
okay.
Not I think and then I get anxious.
Yeah.
So I wake up and I'm anxious.
Okay, Anthony.
So thoughts around that? Yeah,
thank you for the question. I really appreciate it, actually. Great question and brave to ask. Thank you. So, yeah, as Anthony rightly has identified, there's anxiety which is in the body, and then there's anxiety which we recreate by thinking. So if you were to think about all the things you have to do on Monday morning, you'd probably get anxious, right? So we want to just put that aside. That's our thinking pattern. However, low-level anxiety, or in some people quite high, sometimes is in their body more permanently. This could be a trauma-based thing. Obviously, I'm not going to do trauma work with you now, Anthony. It could simply be your culture. It could be intergenerational. You know, if you live in a big city, you can wake up this way. Whenever I'm in Israel, I wake up like I've just had an espresso, you know? Those of us who are addicts often are wired this way. I suspect, you know, talking to my fellow alcoholics, I'm in long-term sobriety, and nearly all of us wake up with a charge. I think it's biological to some extent for some people. So whether it comes from trauma, biology, you know, culture, the physical environment we're in, you know, I experience it more in big cities than in the countryside. These are all factors. And then the question becomes, and it can actually discourage us from being embodied. So people always say, oh, the body is a safe space, the body is home. And yeah, generally, but for some people, not so much. For some people, the body's stressful. They'd much rather be escaping into their heads. I remember one time one of my closest friends killed herself, and it was so awful. I spent 3 days playing a computer game and drinking because I just wasn't ready to feel that. It was too much. You know, my mum, I was quite young, and my mum, to her credit, just let me play computer games for 3 days and just kept lager in the fridge, kept drinking. And after 3 days, I was ready to cry. I was ready to feel. You know? So sometimes the body is not a place we're ready to go to. And for me, that was a temporary thing. For other people, it's more long-term. And I think this is where titration comes in. So this is where this principle from somatic experiencing of touch and go. It's like resource yourself, feel, resource yourself again. Okay, you know, whether that's eat a sandwich, do a breathing exercise, talk to a friend, you know, there's lots of ways to resource ourselves, somatically, whatever. Resource, feel, resource. Okay, then it's resource, feel, resource. Then it's resource, feel, resource. So we can build that capacity through time, through little and often. We call this calibration. So I'm not teaching you guys as therapists today, but that's a good principle to know about. And always be gentle, always be forgiving, always say, today, what can I really handle today? And for some days, it's one breath. It's just, you know, and then fuck it, get out of there. Yeah, there's no requirement we be embodied the whole time. I can't, it's too much. Yeah, it's just like, I think generally the journey is increasing depth and increasing amounts over time, but I don't know anyone that's just like fully there the whole time. You know, does that help a little bit, Anthony? Really appreciate that question. Thank you. Great question. Anyone got another question? Come on. Oh, some chat things. Okay, no worries. Any more questions? How is this relevant to you?
Yes.
So we're gonna, yeah, Kate, go on.
Hi. Yeah. For me, it's more of a problem with shutting down. So not wanting to feel, and I know a lot of that is sort of past trauma and stuff like that. But it's this whole thing of just pushing your body, and because you can't feel it, so you don't even know that you don't feel it. It's not even being aware in the first place, and just pushing it until eventually you fall off the rails, and your body just says enough. And
you're talking about yourself, by the way, now, just so I'm clear. When you say you mean yourself?
Yeah, it was me.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I'm much better now at feeling and stopping before I get to that stage. But there still is this tendency of the head just driving, ignoring the body, no matter how much it's screaming. And so I think I'm guessing you're going to say it's about more awareness and just focusing more on just practicing that, listening to it.
I would love to read you a poem, if you don't mind. Some Google's doing some weird shit. Privacy controls on Google. I agree. I have to agree. Okay, so this is a poem actually by Portia Nelson called, The Hole. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. That may have been you 10 years ago. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. Oh, what the hell's going on my computer? It isn't my fault. It still takes me a long time to get out. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. I get out immediately. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. And the last line, I walk down a different street. So what for me, this poem, I think I've heard Richard Strozzi Heckler, who's another great embodiment teacher, I think shared this with me years ago. And it's a poem about practice, and awareness. So at first we get caught so deeply and numbing stops us feeling, so we don't even feel that we've been caught. Yeah. And then again, being forgiven when we come out of it, oh my God, what's happening? I've lost it. And it's actually really difficult to recover when we're that far gone. Yeah. So the bad news is it takes practice. The good news is the earlier you catch it, the easier it gets, because you can walk down a different street. You can jump out of the hole, the hole, right? But at first it's just like, I didn't even know I was in a hole. I've been here 2 hours. Okay. So that's the nature of disembodiment, disembodiment makes it harder to spot disembodiment. Okay. That's the absolute fucking tricky thing here. And embodiment makes it easier. So it's like, this is the journey I would say with this work. And sometimes I'm just embarrassed by how bad I am at this still, but I'm definitely better than I was. So that's your comparison should always be your long-term practice over time and only with yourself. Okay, if you're looking at your progress.
The other point for me was it was always, I kind of hated my body because when it collapsed, it was like, then I hated my body for not keeping up because I was still mentally, I just wanted to keep driving, but my body gave up and said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. You're going to have to listen. And so it was then I hated my body. So I was even disembodying myself even more by that. And so it's that practice also, just to accept your body for what it's doing and it's trying to help, and listening and understanding that. Yep.
Hating yourself doesn't work. The Buddha said, if self-hatred worked, I would teach you that. It's a fucking brutal quote, but it's really lovely at the same time. That's an actual quote from the Buddha, unlike most of the ones on the internet, from the Pali Canon. Okay, practices to reconnect with body. Yeah, body meditation, little check-ins like we've done. Set your alarm on your phone to go off 5 times a day. Meditate every morning. Get a massage once a week. Do yoga when you can. There's a lot of practice. Go for a walk in the woods. Feel your feet on the ground, barefoot walking. These are some of my practices I do on a daily basis, or at least a weekly basis. You don't have to be doing it all the time. For me, it's like a couple of yoga classes a week, barefoot walking most days, meditation pretty much every day. Yeah, conscious bathing, massaging yourself in the bath. Okay, there's so many practices. Conscious eating, all the, we've been talking about the practices all the time. So,
Mark, I received a question privately. If you want me to read it.
Well, do they want it answered publicly?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So I'm currently in intense pain, back injury, can't walk, on lots of mats. My body is stressful. Any advice to deal with pain? I do yoga breathing and tiny gentle stretches within my limits. And saying also she loves it.
Yeah. Okay, so you can't ever take away pain completely, but relaxing as much as possible means the pain isn't multiplied. Okay, so let's all do an experiment around this. We're all going to hurt ourselves in a non-injurious way if you're up for the experiment. Notice what happened in your body when I said that. You might have already got stressed, so if there's any tension in your body, notice that and let it go. It's all completely, of course, by choice, but there's a little pressure point here. So it's the meaty part of your hand, not the skin, not the web, but the meaty part there. Okay, just one little pressure point, and I'd like you to press that until it hurts. Everyone found the point? If you can't find that one, you could hook around the jaw as another one. Okay, and now tense your body. And notice if the pain gets worse. For most people, it does. Now relax the belly. Everyone say, ah. Think of someone who makes you smile. Breathe. Okay, for most people, the pain gets less. So learning to relax and breathe. The key thing here with pain is actually paradoxically acceptance, which is the last thing we want to do with pain. So saying yes to the pain, relaxing into the pain. Okay, and that is a practice. In martial arts, I've spent years putting wrist locks and arm locks, and you have to practice, because it's like after a while, you see beginners and you put a wrist lock on, they they panic and they tense up. You see an advanced person, relax into it. Almost becomes a bit like S&M-y. Yeah. Remember, it's not the pain itself that's unpleasant, or else no one would like being whipped, and some people do, particularly in Berlin. Okay. Good. So I want to give you guys a chance to reflect. So we're going to do one more little breakout room just for 3 minutes. And I want you to say 2 things. What was your key learning for the day in 1 sentence? So it's not enough time to tell them about all your issues with your mother, okay? This isn't therapy. 1 sentence, what was your key learning? And is there any little practice you want to take away? Like centering, pain practice, we did shaking, we did a little bit of just checking in with the body, we did a few simple breath practices. Is there a little practice you want to take away? Yeah, so key insight and a key practice takeaway. Don't talk about it all day, because you've only got 3 minutes. Daniela, groups, new groups.
All right, I have groups of 3 or 4.
Bathroom.
And we'll open them right now. Enjoy.
I'm flirting in Brazilian Portuguese, you caught me. All right, so welcome back, everybody. Resources. Actually, what did you say? What was a key insight? I'd love to hear a couple, just briefly, because we're almost out of time. Look at that. Cass knows the name of the pressure point in Chinese. Check it out.
We just say a lot, practice and practice and practice.
Praise.
Yeah, I mean, that sometimes, or at least me, I try to read a lot of books and be here in this workshop and look at this and look at that. And at the end, one doesn't make anything. So I guess until one doesn't make this first step to start practice, commit to something, I guess, yeah, it's nonsense.
You got to practice. I'm in Colombia, by the way, next year as well, so I'd love to get your advice sometime. But yeah, so you've got to practice. That's what it's all about. So if you take away nothing from this, don't just be entertained for an hour and a half, okay? Entertainment is not going to help. Learning cognitively is not going to help. Learning about things, but a practice, you can change life. That's the key thing, practice. Yeah. Practice makes permanent. One more person. And we'll end with resources.
Self-regulation can be learned and improved.
It can be learned and improved. So seeing these things as skill sets that can be learned and improved, rather than key character defaults that you can do nothing about. Okay. People say, oh, I'm just an angry person. I'm like, so fucking learn. Right? People say, oh, I'm not very confident. I'm like, so learn. Right? These are things we can learn. Embodiment gives you a how. Right? If I just say to you, be more confident, you're like, well, how? Right? Embodiment gives you that how. Give you poses, give you practices. Be more relaxed. How? Right? Embodiment is the how. It's the manner of. That's almost a definition of embodiment, actually. How we are. The shortest 3-word definition of embodiment I know. How, the manner of. We, it's relational. Are, ontology, being. It's actually quite a deep thing to say. How are you? All right. So resources. We have a new course out, Everyday Embodiment, video course, do it in your own time, super accessible. Cleverly, the early bird rate ends today. I don't think I was actually smart enough to do that deliberately, but that has happened. So that wasn't a deliberate strategy. Maybe my secretary booked this in deliberately to make that happen. But anyway, early bird rate ends today, so do snaffle that. It's pretty cheap. It's actually by far the cheapest thing I'm going to put out there as a course, because normally I'm selling to professionals, and professionals will pay me more money. So if you want a good value course, that is your best option. yeah, the how to tell someone to fuck off video seems to be trending from that course. So haven't covered that today. Slightly amazed at what trends. It's got stuff on parenting, on confidence, on stress, on anxiety, on kids, on embodiment for every room in your house. It's really comprehensive yet simple language. Okay, so buy that course today if you want that. If you want more free stuff, we have a YouTube channel. You can get some taster videos there. We have a podcast. Who's a regular podcast listener? Any regulars? Give me an iTunes review. Okay, right now, go give me 5 stars. So iTunes, totally free, 250 episodes. You could spend your whole life studying that, actually, as a library. It's like an encyclopedia. We have the Embodiment Conference coming up in October. So register for that. That's ridiculously big and loads happening. We have other free events happening. On my events calendar, you'll see other things happening. Maybe Daniela could put the events calendar up as well. What do we got coming up, Daniela? We've got, a free event for facilitators, also Wednesday morning on trauma for facilitators. And that's 9 a.m. UK time, so it's Australia friendly on Wednesday the 29th. We've got working with the body online. What else we've got? How to be more embodied. I'm repeating this workshop, should you want to do it again, Monday afternoon. And the course, Taking No Shit, which currently only has about 5 people booked on. Maybe I've scared everybody off, which is on Friday. Oh my God, that's just next week. So they're either free or cheap, those courses. But if you want something comprehensive, let me re-recommend Everyday Embodiment. I'm really proud of it, just because it's for normal people that have normal lives that actually want some things that work. So I'm proud of that. Okay, final comments, feedback. We have 3 minutes. Final comments, questions, or feedback. Had a nice time? I had a nice time. Can we all give Daniela some love for helping us out? Give us sprinkle some love on her. She's unpaid for this, so let's give her some love. Organise Daniela. She keeps me in line. She's the brains of the operation. I'm the balls. Okay. Questions, comments? Oh, embodiment circles. There's another one. Free groups that meet online. Yes. Okay, transfer to daily life. 1, have the intention to do so. 2, make sure you process the learning by having a chat with someone after your Aikido class, okay? 3, are there direct skills you can transfer, like centering, for example, okay? 4, remind yourself of your Aikido practice regularly throughout the day. You get all those 4? It's like almost like I wrote a fucking book on this, isn't it? So if you look in this book, which is available at all good Amazons, not only is there poetry and life story, but there's lots of lists. One of the lists in this book is how to transfer your practice off the mat. Okay. If you haven't got this book, it is available. I said this yesterday, but I'm going to say it again. Right at the end of this book, right at the end of writing this book, I realized it didn't have a modern why. So I added a very short one at the beginning. I'll finish by reading that in a moment. So this is your last chance to ask questions. Squeeze the lemon that is my experience.
Mark,
Yes.
yeah, you go quite fast for the 4 things, so I only got number 2.
Gonna have to buy the book.
Okay.
No. Intention to do it. Actual skills you can put in your life. Processing, I've put them in another order now. Processing with someone verbally after doing the physical activity and having a reminder throughout the day of that activity. There's at least 5 more in the book, but I've forgotten them if I'm honest. I do go quite quickly, so you might want to watch the recording of this or doing something else. Probably sell the recording actually. Good. This has been a pleasure. Fabian, any questions? As an EFC student, I feel like I should give you some special privileges. No? Everything good? Ça va? Okay. So I did this embodiment book, and at the end I thought, why embodiment? Why now? So at the end I wrote this. So this is why embodiment is trending right now. The times necessitate it. I think this has got even more true since I wrote this. In a time of chaos, the body is an anchor. In time of mistrust and post-truth, the body is a source of wisdom. In a time of disconnection, the body is where reconnecting begins, first to ourselves, then through that to meaning, then to each other, and vitally the planet. That is why embodiment and why now. I felt like I haven't wasted my life. That was a little prayer as well to the universe. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and wonderful lives. I'll never see you again, but I hope I do see you again. So everyone look at the screen, wishing each other well. Little Zoom meta practice. And Daniela, could you unmute everyone? We normally finish by saying goodbye or thank you or fuck off in our first languages, as you prefer. They are the options: goodbye, thank you, or fuck off. And that will be the end of the workshop. So on 3, 1, 2, 3, goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And lastly, fuck off.
Ciao.